with, let's see, workplace development,
Organizational
yeah, and local roads, and a lot of subjects here. Okay, tell us a little something about what you'd like to.
Well, good morning, everybody. For the record, my name is Christine Hutzel. I'm the Director of Organizational Development for the Agency of Transportation. Thank you so much for some time today. Myself and my team are going to be presenting. I oversee the VTrans Training Center, technical training, occupational health and safety, and then the Vermont Local Roads program. So,
Wow, a lot of departments there.
yeah, so Sarah and Liz are first-time presenters today. So in the spirit of growing our team, we are bringing our team members in to have an opportunity to spend time with you and show the good work that they're doing with their teams.
Good. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, so just starting off, just wanted to paint a little bit of a picture. We know workforce has been an interesting challenge. So just a few statistics just to start. Many of us heard about this great resignation that happened in 2020. A lot of people retired, left the workforce, and it had quite an impact. But from there, these trends have continued. And in 2021, it was the great reshuffle. So people left the workforce, and those who were left started thinking about where they either wanted to move now that they could telework full time, were they living in different states. I think all of us in our community saw some movement of people. And in 2022, it continued with what we're calling the Great Consideration. So research is a little mixed, but generally speaking, about 40% of all employees are keeping their options open. So a much more mobile workforce than we had in the past. So when you look at the US unemployment rate, tracking in that 3% range throughout the year 2022, and Vermont, even more pressure in the 2.2%, 2.345, up and down. It's been staying pretty steady. We definitely have to be strategic about our workforce. Since February of 2020, 3.4 million Americans have left the workforce. There's currently a 62.3% labor participation rate in the US. And so that means 62% of all humans living are actually participating in the workforce. Vermont is about, based on the Department of Labor numbers that they shared this week, we're about 0.5% lower than that. Vermont, we are at 61.7%. So again, these shrinking issues, these are all issues you all, yes.
It's not all humans living, right? It's just those that could work. So we're not talking about children.
It's everybody.
It is.
Yeah, the labor participation rate is everybody. Yeah.
The other thing that is unique to Vermont is the percentage of between, I don't know, 21 and 35, which is a prime workforce age group, are actually not in the labor force because they're have a disability. And the challenge is, can they be brought back into the workforce? But we are very high state relative to that percentage of the population. It's not has been found disabled. And I think probably a number, I don't know what the percentage is, physical versus some kind of mental health disability, but it's a very significant portion of a very young workforce potential workforce cohort.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then when you look at our aging population, that
well, we're evidence you can continue to still work, right?
Sure. Is that a number that you know, Jane, as far as, is that a number that you, I mean, obviously you have a lot of knowledge about it, but is it a published number as far as the percentage of that?
Yes, it was. I think it might, I don't remember where I read it, but, and it may have, I don't know, let me see if I can track it down, but anyway, it's a high percentage, and it raises questions about, can accommodations be made, exactly what is the nature. So it's, I was quite struck that we had a higher rate of relatively young adults who are not in the labor force for a disability reason.
Yeah, definitely. I know that our civil rights team partners with AHS and their partners. And it's called Bright Futures. I think that's one of the programs.
That's for children, child care.
And so I know that our civil rights group does do work with the organizations that support people with disabilities. And so, yeah, lots of opportunities.
Do you know if this labor participation rate, what the highest was? Because my guess is in isolation, it's sort of meaningless. But because if we had a lot of births, which would be good for our workforce, the participation rate would go way down.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
infants.
I know that the Department of Labor provided a legislative briefing, I think it was 2 nights ago, and we were tracking in the low to mid 70s.
So a decent
From I
drop.
think about 2010, I believe it was to 2012. I can look, I brought the graph with
So
me.
like a 10% drop is significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moving on in the interest of time, next slide. So how is AOT faring? Just quickly, our retirement rates are up. The graph behind me, the blue line is AOT and the orange line is the state of Vermont government average. You can see that we are definitely trending higher than average in the state. With our turnover, we used to enjoy a wider gap between the state average, and that is continuing to narrow with the competitiveness in the job market. Obviously, we know with IIJA funding, there's a lot of competitions for our employees.
And it's state employees, not the state of Vermont, like everybody
Correct.
is.
That's the state of Vermont statistics. These numbers are based on DHR's workforce report that's posted annually on the
Well,
website.
I can say the employee in the agency who's worked for 60 years is helping on
Yeah.
our retirement underfunding.
That's correct.
You might have the longest working state employee in all of state government. That's a
Absolutely.
long time.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? Well, we've been, as you know, we've spent some time together over the years, and we do a lot with workforce to try to attract, engage, and retain our workforce. We wrote a strategic workforce plan back in 2019 in partnership with Civil Rights. We partner closely. As a reminder, Civil Rights does our talent acquisition as well as external workforce. That plan expired in 2021, and we've purposely held back writing another one because we really wanted to see how the workforce would stabilize with return to in-person work and collaboration days. And we really feel like we're in a good place in terms of understanding our workforce mobility moving forward. So I've been serving as the co-chair on an AASHTO committee where we've just developed a playbook to help all of the DOTs write strategic workforce plans. So we have it mapped out. Ours is going to be ready, hopefully, if we stay on track, by May 1st of this year. And so this is really around identifying and targeting what is our data saying, what are our strategies going to be, not just anecdotally, what do we think we see, but what is our data actually proving out, and then developing strategies based on that. Part of our strategic workforce plan is the 4 employee committees that we brought together, and we work with employees at all levels as well as executive staff to determine what our strategies are going to be. So things like really documenting our culture or putting language in all supervisor evaluations about being a supervisor. What do we expect? What kind of training can they expect? So we work on these categories. So you're going to hear more detail about like the training delivery that we're doing and the safety, but some of the things we've been really focused on is having an effective hybrid telework model and having in-person collaboration days, continuing to work on our civility commitment, preventing sexual harassment, unconscious bias training. If people do not have psychological safety at work, it doesn't matter how much you train them and grow them, they're not going to be safe, happy, or innovative. And all of that determines their engagement. We have done a lot in the training center in terms of different types of training modalities, career coaching. Sarah will be talking more about that. We've been leveraging decentralized reallocation to make our pay more competitive using the state systems that are in place. We upgraded more than 60% of our workforce in the last couple of years in terms of their pay grades. And then really honing in on workforce data management. What is our data telling us? Why are people leaving? Who's getting promoted? Who's moving around? What groups may be more successful than others and why? And how do we replicate success across the board? And then just ending on the employee engagement survey, I've heard you were interested. So just a few numbers. Our participation rate for 2022 was 60%. That's about what we've been trending. We're really trying to push that to 70. Secretary Flynn did some great advertising this year about that, and we're continuing to encourage people to participate. VTrans had an above state average response on about 45% of the questions, DMV about 18%. DMV has a little higher participation rate. They tend to trend a little bit lower, but we saw some nice lifts this year. DMV had a 9% increase in their communication questions. In morale, DMV had a 12% increase in morale. VTrans a 4% increase in morale. That's really great, as we saw state of Vermont employees have an overall decrease. We saw an increase. Same with career paths. And this is really good news, I think, is what we're talking about today with learning. 11.3% of VTrans employees increased that they believe they have a solid career path, and DMV 8%. So these are some of the positives that we've seen. Communication is always a challenge. It's a challenge across the board. We're doing a lot of investing in that, but we take these results and we bring them to these employee strategic workforce committees and leadership groups to think about, like, okay, what are we going to do with it? Don't ask a question that you're then not going to do something with the response. So that's what we're working on for the employee engagement survey. That is all online. If you want to talk about it later, I'm happy to come back.
Great, thanks. Do you also do exit interviews when you lose an employee?
Yes, we do. In fact, we just re-energized it. We were doing exit interviews through GHR before the pandemic. During the pandemic, it went to online. And now that we're kind of past the inability to meet in person, we've returned to doing in-person exit interviews. We're piloting it right now in our finance administration group under Jana's leadership. She's very passionate about it as well. And so once the exit interview is done, then I meet with the division director and, if appropriate, the manager. And we're assessing.
Collecting that data.
We are collecting that data. So there's anecdotal data and then statistics as well in terms of what their experience was, why they're leaving, their experience with their supervisor, their experience with leadership, their experience as a supervisor, and then any suggestions that they have. So it's really good data and it's important, but it's also really about training the supervisors to have this conversation before somebody gives their notice. Because usually once they've given their notice, it's hard to get them to change their mind. They've now made a commitment to somebody else. But if you can have these coaching conversations during the year, then hopefully you can head something off at the pass before they really start applying somewhere else. But all of it's important. So with any other questions?
Well, one of the things about workforce, and we're talking about it, and that's aging workforce. And you've got some employees we see, and of course, the people that are coming in to testify generally are senior just by definition. So if you were looking along that age spectrum, how is that, what is the sort of the distribution of your employee age-wise in terms of, you know, what percentage might be between 21 and 35 and 35 to 50 or and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, we're tracking that. I don't have that data off the top of my head, but I'm happy to provide it to you, and I could likely get that before we're done today.
Well, it doesn't matter. I was just kind of interesting because some smaller departments, if you have a really large, you know, percentage of your workforce and they're in very specialized areas, you know, really it's going to create a real pressure.
Yeah, I would say that we do.
Maybe if you're in healthcare, you'd really be.
we do have an aging workforce, and I think that this is why we need to continue to invest in knowledge management, knowledge transfer. There are a lot of strategies that are in place because in state government, you can't do traditional succession planning because it's open and competitive bidding for jobs. So I can't, Sarah's my deputy, I can't assume when I retire that Sarah's going to get my job, but I can give Sarah opportunities and grow Sarah so that she's prepared to
She's
competitively
competitive.
compete when I do retire.
The big thing out there right now is wages, and people are stealing people all with $5 more an hour. I mean, I hear it every day in construction, they're begging. So if you're getting $20 an hour, I'll give you 25. I'll do, and I think that's the big factor right now. We talked about just a year or so ago that about $15 an hour. That's history today. Remember, we were going to do it in 2025. Well, that's gone. I
And
mean,
New Hampshire still the
Yeah.
federal minimum.
I see that. Well, they're going to raise it now, I guess. too.
No, well, there's a bill.
Yeah, there's a bill to do it, but that's the factor I see now is contractors are stealing from one another. It's crazy. And that's why they're leaving, I think, a lot of these jobs. They want the money today. They want to, some don't look at the pension plan. They look at how much cash do I go home with every week.
Yeah, the amount of monies that the state invests in people's retirement pensions,
Right.
health benefits, all that is staggering. It's a big, I think I heard the other day, it was like, and I hate to say it, but I think it was like $27,000 an employee. As far as what it was adding to, each employee. That's
It's usually
a
about a
huge number.
third of their salary.
Right, yeah.
So in the interest of time, are there any other
Thank you.
questions? I'm going to hand off to
Can I
Sarah.
ask one question about how much are you baking in hard into the hybrid work model? As far as, are you making hard decisions about that one right now? Or are you just trying to still figure that out as far as where that's gonna go?
The hybrid.
Well, as far as telemarketing, and all of that, are we making hard decisions on that? We're just trying to manage it as it goes? Because I think we have to be a little careful.
Are you talking about the hybrid work model?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my thought is that we just might have to we might want to take that a little slower. We might want to just let that work its way out because there's just so many unknowns still as far as
Sure.
where things are.
Sure. Well, I know each group is handling it a little bit differently based on our business needs. My team has been back in office work a day a week for the last year and a half. So what we're finding is really, it's about making it meaningful. It's about getting people back in the office to work either a day a month or a day a week, but make that collaboration meaningful so that they're not sitting there going, why am I here
Yeah.
when I could just as easily have been doing this from home?
I think there's a lot of jobs that can probably be easy, but when you do get into that collaborative, without overusing that word, when you are really trying to drive policy and drive culture, there are some parts of government that do rely more on a collaboration. And I would want to not lose that.
100%. 100%.
Okay,
I know we're out of time, but I just want to make a statement from a plow truck driver that I drove with. He said he had a friend that really wanted to get a job with the state, but it took 4 to 8 weeks to get hired. And during that time, in entry-level wages, he found a job that paid $25 an hour. Then they hired him on the spot that day. So I just think if there's ways for on-ramp, a faster on-ramp, a temporary time, a probationary period where we can on-ramp people more temporarily, that might be another strategy for the state to attract entry-level workers.
100%.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
thank you.
I promised him I'd say it. So,
I think you said it twice. So I think
You said it twice.
you met your.
Yeah.
But you do
I'm just
remember the
working on
Pendleton
one
Act.
You want
Mike-
you want the secretary to come in, so you can tell him too.
Customers
Okay, good morning, welcome.
Versus patriot.
Is it Sarah?
Yeah, good morning. My
Morning.
name is Sarah Williams, and I'm here on behalf of the Training Center. I oversee technical and learning development programs at the Training Center. So now that Christine has given some statistics and some information about workforce, I'm going to talk about some of the specific programs in which we utilize to attract, retain, grow our employees. Feel free to ask questions throughout. I'm not going to talk about everything on the screen, but if there's something that sparks your interest, definitely please feel free to ask questions. So AOT prides itself on creating a learning and supporting environment. And so with that, the V-Trans Training Center provides effective tools, resources, training opportunities to really engage and grow our workforce. With that, we have in-person learning, we have hybrid learning that we just talked about, and a mix of some of those, some combination of that as we have come back to the office and come back to the workplace in post-pandemic world. So all of these things benefit the individual learner, their team, and then the overall organization as a whole. So one of the things I want to talk about is ELDT, entry-level driver training. That was new regulations that came into play on February 7th of 2022, put down by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association. And that was an initiative to heighten the standards for training and documentation that you needed to obtain your CDL. Whether you were obtaining your CDL for the first time, you were upgrading from a Class A to a Class B, or possibly adding an endorsement of a school bus, hazardous material, or passenger vehicle. So there was a requirement for AOT to conform to those requirements if we wanted to continue to train our folks internally. And we feel very strongly that that's a cost savings. It gives our trainers an opportunity to grow and develop their career as well. As the average cost to send people to an external training facility is anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000, depending on the CDL in which that they're going to obtain and any endorsements that they might be looking to add. VTTC also wanted to position themselves to assist the municipalities. Todd is going to speak more about that from the Vermont Local Road standpoint, but we wanted to make sure that what we were using could also be translated to our municipality partners, just for good measure and good practice as we grow our workforce and assist their workforces as well. As a training provider, we had to collaborate with many different people. There were DMV folks, our district maintenance fleet personnel, facilities, lots of different things, because the requirements stated that we must have adequate space, you must meet the training requirements in terms of a theory curriculum, behind the wheel road, behind the wheel range. So all of these things needed to be in play before we went live on February 7th, 2022. The training itself consists of 3 components. It would be the theory portion or the instruction. It can be classroom or online, a behind the wheel road and a behind the wheel range that I just spoke about.
What is range?
Range is, you're going to be working on those skills like in the facility, wherever, if it's at the specific garage you're working at. So it could be alley docking, straight line backing. On behind the wheel road is where you actually are out on, you know, the interstate, the secondary roads, whatever that looks like. But yeah, range is all that more controlled stuff at the training facility.
So how much training is done? Do you bring people in as trainers?
So
Or are you, for example, teaching CDL?
I am not, but that's a great question. Yeah, so we use our workforce. So there are folks in the garages that have had their CDL for many years. They've been deemed kind of the competent trainer. Every district has 2 CDL trainers that we utilize, and they've gone through our kind of comprehensive training, how to be a trainer, what that looks like. We brought them right on board when we were developing this program, and they do all of the training with their own district personnel. Sometimes they tap into other districts if they're kind of stacked up and they don't have enough time, or they're maxed out. We share resources across our district lines and our regions just to help out wherever we can. So yeah, it's all internal folks. Does that answer that question?
And where is the training center?
So our training center is in Berlin, right on Route 302. But yep, right, we share the same facility. Yep. The training facilities for our CDL requirements are actually 16 different garages throughout the state. So with that, we had to, as part of this bigger program, we had to register all of our training locations through the TPR, the Training Provider Registry, which is this national depository of information where the DMV actually goes and pulls that information when one wants to go and sit for their CDL skills test. So we registered through the national organization, which would be the TPR, Training Provider Registry, and 16 different locations. We have, I have the number here, 17 CDL instructors were identified, and we also utilized our learning management system, our LMS ambassadors, as people to do the initial data entry of all of those paperwork pieces that needed to be tracked and documented. With that, again, it was this huge collaborative effort that took a lot of time. The curriculum we used came from Clear Roads, which is another national resource that we're a member of. It's basically a state highway winter maintenance group of folks that do research. They provide resources like this for the new ELDT stuff. And so we use their curriculum. We have fairly high standards when it comes to the training that we put out to our folks. So we didn't think that just putting this information online for them to access was sufficient. We voiced over more than 1,600 slides so that folks could have visual and auditory learning levels and components that they felt would be the most necessary or most successful for them. It was a very collaborative effort between us. Safety was involved, just making sure that we were setting ourselves up for success. And we provide continued support still to this day. It started with bi-weekly meetings with our trainers and our LMS ambassadors just to provide any support, answer any questions. The rules coming down from the federal government were not always as clear and concise as we would have liked them. So we were sort of learning as we went. And we felt like keeping in close contact with our group of trainers and LMS ambassadors was the best way to support our workforce moving forward in this new initiative. Yeah.
The savings on there, is that because that's the savings from doing it in-house instead of sending it to a CDL school?
Yes, based on the number of potential or the average number of folks that we would train per year based on turnover or folks leaving, new people coming in.
Hire them, and then part of the agreement was that you would send them to the school.
No, we didn't, but with this new regulation, we had to go through all of these steps in order to continue to do the training in-house.
Okay.
So we sort of equated that to a cost savings because the alternative at this point would be you don't have a choice to train them in-house if you don't follow these regulations. Yep. The next program I'm going to talk about is TLI, which is the Transportation Leadership Institute. And that is a program that provides opportunities for rising professionals to expand their range of learning and participation in management principles, ongoing initiatives, and organizational leadership at AOT. We use monthly meetings. They are now in person and or virtual or some combination of that. We have mentoring as part of that, readings, a variety of other activities that we put them through, and they really get a chance to develop their skills and knowledge needed to become a future leader. We really work to capitalize on adult learning theories and best practices. The goal of this program obviously is to develop the next generation of leaders at AOT. It's a 12-month-long program, and we expose our participants to many different facets of our agency. So it could be emergency management, it could be contract admin, it could be generational differences, whatever the curriculum, we send them through this year-long curriculum, and it really just grows this network of people, provides them a growth and learning path, and encourages career-long relationships among members of the cohort. Todd is actually a member of this cohort right now. So one of our own is in the program, which is really neat and interesting. This year's cohort has 26, but it's typically 20 to 25. It's application based, so it varies a little bit year to year. And it's across all of our divisions. It was designed as a retention strategy, the sweet spot being that like 5 to 7 year employee. You know, they've got their feet wet, they've got a foundation underneath them. And then how are we going to really expedite their growth, capture them, bring them in, make them want to stay, make them aware of the bigger initiatives that AOT is involved in. Two other things that kind of go hand in hand, they're very similar, but I will explain some of the differences, is our mentoring program and our job shadow program. So our mentoring program is fairly robust, and it's been active for quite some time. Gives employees a chance to network, promotes succession planning, knowledge transfer within groups, sometimes within other sections that you might not be aware of. It provides mutually beneficial relationships for both the mentor and the mentee. And the way that we run our mentor program is it's a 6-month program, and we ask that individuals meet typically once a month for 6 months. It's more of a holistic approach, mentorship being asking questions about all sorts of life and leadership and work. The job shadow is set up to really hone in on specific skills that somebody's looking to acquire, or something that maybe their job ties directly to another person's job, and understanding what that person does can really help me do my job better. So they're both networking opportunities, ways to build relationships within your group, outside of your group, but the mentoring being more holistic, the job shadow being more specific to a duty or a skill. And in the interest of time, I think that's where I will stop. But if there's anything up there that piques your interest, we can definitely have further conversations, or if you have questions right now, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Liz. Good morning, you're welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to present to all of you today. As Christine said, this is my first time presenting, so I have my notes in front of me, and please bear with me as I go through them.
Don't worry.
For the record, my name is Elizabeth Beebe. I'm the Occupational Safety and Health Manager for the Vermont Agency of Transportation. I've been with the agency for about a year now in this capacity, and before that, I was a safety technician for about 3 years here. I'm excited to join you on this beautiful Vermont day to provide some information on our training program, but first I'd like to do a little shout out to our plow truck drivers that help make it possible for us all to be here today. So we're very grateful for their service.
We are very grateful.
I like to put out a shout out as much as I possibly can because they are the bread and butter of our business.
Well, they're also the most visible, maybe DMV, but in terms of public interaction.
They affect the moods of a lot of people.
And a lot of people affect their moods.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the truth too.
It's also dangerous work. The person I drove with had recently been hurt on the job, and it was a serious injury, and it's dealing with really heavy equipment, so I'm interested.
It is. Our jobs are very physical.
Although I would say the engineering of trucks now are, it used to be, they would say, being a snowplow operator is not a job for an older man because you didn't have all the power assisted and equipment and stuff. There was a lot of really heavy manual and strength-based attributes back
Can't even
50
catch you
years
driving
ago.
instruction.
We have labels saying not to do so inside those trucks. Make sure
I
it
don't know how
doesn't
to do it,
happen.
they only got 2 hands.
Not only with the technology, we've evolved a lot with our ergonomics in those vehicles as well, being able to adjust them so that our drivers are more comfortable to sit in that and have.
Heated seats, I want to know.
They're taking them
Would the
away. They
taxpayers
should, but
allow
it's
that?
an
I don't know.
option.
I don't have heated seats.
Okay, go right ahead.
Let me continue on.
We're running on
I'm in
time.
a bucket.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So the pillar of our safety program is behavior-based safety. So basically what this means is that we need strong engagement with our leaders as well as our employees. And we're observing the jobs that they perform, making sure that our employees are engaged in designing our safety programs and helping out to inform us so that we're meeting the needs of our employees. So in that vein, I want to go over some injury data. This is something that's not necessarily on the slides here because it was derived from some questions that came out of the committee earlier on in the discussion. So the basic gist of it is that we've got 2 ways to look at our injury data. We've got the reported injuries that we receive. It could be a minor cut, a scrape, or it could be a severe injury where somebody is going out on workman's comp. So I'm going to break down both sets of data for you just so that you get those general numbers. And I do apologize that I don't have a graphic for this. But we're going to look back from 2017 until now for our basic injury reporting. So in 2017, we had 285 injuries reported to us. In 2018, we had 223. In 2019, we had 270. So in 2019, our safety section basically did a reformation. So instead of having individualized safety professionals in each one of our units, we had a combined safety team. So at this point, we are a 5-person team. We've got 4 regional safety technicians in our areas and myself as the safety manager. So at that time too, we also instituted a lot of changes in our department. We went from being a compliance driven team focused on mostly going out and inspecting our employees and making sure that they were doing the things that they needed to be doing, to being more guidance driven and being more employee based. So we've seen really positive changes with that. Not only are our employees engaging with us more and asking us more questions and wanting to be involved in safety, they're feeling less like we are there as someone who's going to get them in trouble, somebody who's just looking for compliance, someone who's just looking to make sure we're hitting those numbers. We're now part of the team, which is a really pleasant change, and it's brought about a lot of engagement. So like I said, in 2019, we had 270 incidences that were reported to us. In 2020, as we all know, the pandemic hit and that drastically changed our workforce and changed how we do our processes. It also changed how we looked at our injury data. So in 2020, we had 208 injuries reported to us. And again, in that time, we had made a lot of programmatic changes. It's really nice to see a jump like that, but also we have to consider that COVID was a factor in this. Out of those 208 injuries, 23 of them were reported COVID, don't necessarily want to say cases, but involvement. And when it comes to our injury data, we report not only the physical injuries that our employees received, but illnesses, and that drastically did change the way that we looked at it. So if we look at true injuries that actually reported where somebody did a physical injury, cut, something happened to them, we have 115 as true injuries that were reported outside of those illnesses. In 2021, we saw 235 injuries reported, 82 of which were COVID related, leaving us with 153 injuries physically reported. In 2022, we had 241, 113 of those were COVID related. So that leaves us with 128. So we see going from 2017 at 285 to 2022 with 128 actual injuries that were reported to us. I know I don't necessarily need to explain that to you, but that's a pretty positive trend for us to go down that drastically. And I do correlate that directly to the work that my team has done to make sure that we engage with our employees.
Hate to pay your workman's comp. It must be high.
Yeah, well, workman's comp is an interesting statistic.
Self-insured.
Yes, yes, we are.
You are. Oh,
So back to where I was. Like I said, in 2019, we increased our campaign to encourage reporting also. So not only at that time were we asking our employees to report more injuries, so looking at tick bites or minor scrapes that they would not report to us historically, just because they did not see that as an issue, so they didn't feel it was necessary to do so. However, we press the point that, especially with tick bites, in Vermont, we've seen increased cases in Lyme disease and things that are associated with that. So we want to make sure that they are reporting it so that if an illness does occur, we actually have them on file and we can take care of them better. So like I said, increased reporting, also decrease in things reported. It's kind of an interesting statistic to look at because you can correlate it to a lot of different things. But I do honestly interpret from the data that we are moving in the right direction with the safety program. So when we talk about workers' comp specific cases, so things that resulted in time away or people having to have modified duties, we have data going back to 2019. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the numbers ahead of that for this meeting. And if you would like to see the numbers, we can certainly pull that up. In 2019, we had 43 workman's comp claims. In 2020, we had 37. In 2021, we had 58. In 2022, we had 42. So as you can see from that data, it is relatively consistent. We've had spikes, we've had lows over that time frame. It really does depend on the situation. But looking at the actual injuries that are reported, I think that we can make the direct connection that we are still moving in the right direction. However, we do need to focus a little bit more on those injuries that we can prevent. So right now, my team is working to set up a program to really analyze the data. We've relied a lot on our risk management unit to pull the information for us, but we're going to be taking a more active role in that. And we're going to be meeting with our risk management group regularly to make sure that we are actually getting accurate data with it. So some of the things that we have done in this time to make sure that we are increasing awareness for safety in our programs is that along with these reported injuries, we're developing a better fact-finding program. So when I say fact-finding, that's our nice way of saying injury investigation. We are very careful with our terms as we speak with our community because we want to make sure that our employees understand that we are not investigating them. We're looking for the facts and we're looking for what actually happened in this situation so that we can prevent it in the future. So it's kind of our friendly language. So the fact finding is basically when an incident occurs and we perceive that there could be some data that's gained from it. Minor injuries, cuts and scrapes, those are really hard to do fact findings on because they're very situational. But if there is an incident, for example, if we have an injury where someone, and this is a true example, employees that were working with guardrail, when they cut it, move it, it becomes very sharp. They had their PPE on, they had some gloves that we had worked with them to make sure they were good leather gloves, and yet they still were able to cut their finger because it was so sharp through that. So then we reached out to the other state DOTs across the country and we basically asked them, have you seen this injury? Is this occurring with your employees frequently? What are you doing for this as well? Can you give us examples of what kind of gloves you're using so that we can find ones that are better fit for this job? And in doing so, we work with our storekeepers as well to make sure that we're getting better cut-resistant gloves. So we are directly taking those data pieces and implementing them so that we are putting protective measures in place.
Okay, we are running short on time, so we got one more person.
Yeah.
Yep.
We only got 10 minutes.
I can certainly cut it short. The rest of the information that I was going to present is on the slide, so as long as you are comfortable with me not speaking to those points, I will move on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it. Good overview. Thank you. And we have Todd, you're the last, I guess.
Good morning. My name is Todd Eaton. I'm the Vermont Local Roads Manager. Thank you very much for an opportunity to share what our program has been accomplishing. So VLR exists.
Yes.
I always get better back roads and local roads.
It's very easy to, yeah.
Oh,
This is
okay.
just technical assistance.
Technical assistance, we do training, Better Roads, more grant program. Yes.
And this used to be, we moved it from.
St. Michael's
St.
College.
Mike's, Yeah.
So we exist to assist municipal highway departments and town governments with the improvement of their road networks through training, technical assistance, and communication tools, and as well as information exchange. Some of the ways that we do this, as you see from the slide, is our listserv, which is essentially an email chat room where Vermont Local Road shares information. The majority of of any kind of communication that we want to push out to the municipalities, we do that through the listserv. It's also an opportunity for municipal officials to share information with one another. And often we see ongoing conversations about policy, process, and challenges that happens in that particular forum. Between town officials. We maintain something called a learning management system, our LMS, which tracks training records, training registrations, and as well as our Road Scholar credits. Our Road Scholar program provides opportunities for further advancement and encourages continued education with the progression through 3 levels. And then finally, the 4th level being a master's level, which consists of accredited workshops consisting on covering 5 different categories: technical, safety, equipment, environmental, and supervision. These workshops are primarily in person, but we do include online and on-demand trainings like the TC3 trainings offered and this is a result of the collaborative effort of the National LTAP, the Local Technical Assistance Program, their efforts and working with AASHTO, the American Association of State Highways and Transportation Officials. So we were able to offer that to the municipalities at no cost. On the next slide, in the past, our workshop offering really weighed heavily on the safety and the technical tiers. And although we have no intention of reducing the amounts of safety and technical trainings that we offer the municipalities, one of our strategic goals coming out of the pandemic was to increase the amount of equipment training that we offer. And as you can see, we have had some success in fulfilling this goal. As our equipment, we have nearly 300 participants in the previous year for equipment training. Equipment training is one of the greatest needs that the municipalities have, especially given the job market and the turnover rate that we have been experiencing. And with these more tactile, hands-on courses, safety and technical elements can then be emphasized while increasing the skill of the participant with equipment in a much more highly engaging atmosphere as they're kind of out in their elements and actually working with the piece of equipment. And based on the request of our customer base, we did reduce the amount of virtual trainings that we were offering coming out of the pandemic. I think everybody kind of had the Zoom fatigue. But we continue to drive something called the hybrid learning structure wherever that's feasible. And for example, with our backhoe excavator training, which we just recently started to provide municipalities, we scheduled a 2-hour virtual event. And in that virtual event, we can cover the VOSHA and the OSHA regulations, all of the things that we would normally do in kind of a classroom setting. And in the past with equipment training, we might have had the morning before lunch where we're sitting in a classroom setting, and then the afternoon, we'd have the opportunity to be out with the equipment. Doing it this way, all of that classroom type work is taken care of before the in-person training. So we have the entire day to interact with the equipment and then rehearse a lot of what we might have talked about in the virtual training. So we have continued to work to leverage what we learned about online training through 2020 and 2021. And now we offer what we consider a more efficient versions of some of our certification programs. like the e-learning that we developed during the pandemic.
So is
for
some of
flag
this
service.
training provided out in the districts, for example,
In the districts that would,
the highway districts, or are you everything,
so a lot,
like the hands-on use of the equipment, is that,
what we offer is we focus primarily first on the municipalities. And then if we have space available, then we open it up to V-Trans.
Is the training held at the municipalities or they have to drive to your locations?
Generally at the municipality, yes. And as much as possible, we move it around the state to reduce their travel time to less than an
I
hour
was wondering.
And on their equipment?
and on their equipment.
And is CDL part of the training?
Absolutely. If you'd like to skip to the last, my fourth
So
slide.
so the municipalities can make use of the CDL training we heard about.
Yes.
So they can send somebody to that school even though they're only gonna work for this.
Not in that way.
Okay.
So that when V-Trans registered for to be an EDL provider, you have the option to either register as a private or a public entity. V-Trans chose to.
It's good benefit for the towns. Very good benefit.
Well, what is it? Well, let's hear what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
So V-Trans registered as private so what that means is that they can train their own employees. So what I do with the municipalities is we have been able to offer the same theory curriculum to the municipalities at no cost. And so they are able to take that. We do all the reporting for them once their trainee completes that. I will personally go out to different municipalities. I've had several opportunities to be able to do that, to work with road foremen to register their municipality as a training facility for the range and the road. Help them set up their curriculum. We have lots of guiding documents that basically the curriculum is already developed for them if they just adopt what we have to offer.
So municipalities can train their own then.
So they can train their own.
Once they get there.
And a lot of that training, and so, this coming week, I have an appointment with the town to do just this. And so that oftentimes the training itself can be done on the job. So, if you have your trainer sitting in the vehicle with a permit holding trainee, they can go out plow a road.
And are small towns able to do that, or is there more, because I just think of my town with only like a few drivers.
Exactly. That is the challenge. So every town can, and I'm encouraging every town, even if they don't have a trainee currently that they're looking to onboard, that they register, go through the process of registering and understand the training process.
Even if you wanted to, you couldn't train the municipal employees.
We could, no,
You could
not, V-Trans cannot.
If you're not registered.
You could only do the theory.
The way that's broken out between the public and the private trains their own employees, public is more for that training school that is,
Do you see towns kind of coming together so that,
Right.
that they're maybe doing some training regionally?
That the challenge again with that would be falling under that. You'd
They
be
couldn't
falling
train
outside of
other-
private again.
Right. Like Marshfield couldn't train Plainfield or vice versa.
Exactly, which is a discussion we've had. I live in Marshfield.
Yeah,
That seems
yeah,
crazy.
unfortunate. Yeah, it would be good if the towns could just send them to AOT's school.
Could send them somewhere, and but as it is, it's the difference between private and public and the liability associated with that.
That's why we just steal the employees.
Okay.
Have them go through AOT's training and
Well, we
then.
got a couple more minutes, so anything, I know we're cutting up, apologize. for
No,
that.
that's fine. Well, I think for the third slide, if I just go over that, that's one of the things that I would really like to, as far as an accomplishment, that I think has been really good. We've utilized in two ways the stick funding to increase the programming that we offer for the municipalities. One way during the pandemic or prior to the pandemic, we were awarded stick funds to host and to put together a equipment show. As Providence would have it, that had to be canceled. And I worked with the stick committee to find a way that we could satisfy their requirements and find an innovative way to offer value to the municipalities without losing that awarded funding. So what we've been able to do is work through developing an onboarding program, which again would be a free program that would be for municipal new hires, and much of who don't have any experience as they would have in the past, some type of construction experience. Oftentimes they don't now. So having at least that basic awareness level training that OSHA requires any employee to have, and being able to offer that to them on demand. And very proud to be able to say that we've been able to collaborate with Vermont Association of General Contractors to now be able to provide MSHA training, which is Mine Safety and Health Administration training. Any if any municipal worker enters a pit to bring home a load of gravel, or if they have a stockpile on their own site, they have to have the safety training. In the past, they would have to pay somebody else. And for the first time in Vermont Local Roads history, we can provide that to the municipalities at no cost. So,
Okay,
with that,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
appreciate your time.
Slips, trips and falls there.